Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Lord of the Flies. And today I'm going to start with Chapter 2 Fire on the Mountain. Here we go. By the time Ralph finished blowing the conch, the platform was crowded. There were differences between this meeting and one held in the morning. The afternoon sun slanted in from the other side of the platform, and most of the children, feeling too late to smart of sunburn, had put their clothes on. The choir, noticeably less of a group, has discarded their cloaks. Ralph sat on the fallen trunk, his left side to the sun. On his right were most of the choir. On his left, the larger boys who had known each other before the evacuation. Before him, small children squatted in the grass. Silence now. Ralph lifted the cream and pink shell to his knees, and sun breeze scattered light over the platform. He was uncertain whether to stand up or remain sitting. He looked sideways to his left towards the bathing pool. Piggy was sitting near, but giving no help. Ralph cleared his throat. Well then. All at once, he found he could talk fluently and explained what he had to say. He passed a hand through his fair hair and spoke. We're on an island. We've been on the mountaintop and seen water all around. We saw no houses, no smoke, nor footprints, no boats, no people. We're on an uninhabited island with no other people on it. Jack broke in. All the same, you need an army for hunting pigs. Yes, there are pigs on the island. All three of them tried to convey the sense of the pink, laughing, struggling in the creepers. We saw, squealing. It broke away. Before I could kill it, but next time. Jack slammed his knife into a trunk and looked around, challengingly. The meeting fell down again. So you see, said Ralph, we need hunters to get us meat. And another thing. He lifted the shell on his knees and looked round the sun-slashed faces. There aren't any grown-ups. We shall have to look after ourselves. The meeting hummed and was silent. And another thing. We can't have everybody talking at once. We'll have to have hands up like at school. He held the conch before his face and glanced through the mouth. Then I'll give him the conch. Conch? That's what this shell is called. I'll give the conch to the next person to speak. He can hold it when he's speaking, but look, and he won't be interrupted, except by me. Jack was on his feet. We'll have rules, he cried excitedly. Lots of rules. Then when anyone breaks them, Ryu, Wako, Bong, Doink. Ralph felt the conch lifted from his lap. Then Piggy was standing, cradling the great cream shell, and shouted, Die down. Jack, left on his feet, looked uncertainly at Ralph, who smiled and patted the log. Jack sat down. Piggy took off his glasses and blinked at the assembly while he wiped them on his shirt. You're hindering Ralph. You're not letting him get to the most important thing. He paused, effectively. Who knows we're here, huh? They knew at the airport, the man with the trumpet thing. My dad? Piggy put on his glasses. Nobody knows where we are, said Piggy. He was paler than before and breathless. Perhaps they knew where we was going to, and perhaps not. But they don't know where we are, 'cause we never got there. He gaped at them for a moment, then swayed and sat down. Ralph took the conch from his hands. That's what I was going to say, he went on, when you all gazed at their intent faces. The plane was shot down in flames. Nobody knows where we are. We may be here a long time. The silence was so complete that they could hear the fetch and miss of Piggy's breathing. The sun slanted in and lay golden over half the platform. The breezes that on the lagoon had chased their tails like kittens were finding their way across the platform and into the forest. Ralph pushed back the tangle of hair, of fair hair that hung on his forehead. So, we may be here for a long time. Nobody said anything. He grinned suddenly. But this is a good island. We, Jack, Simon, and me, we climbed the mountain. It's wizard. There's food and drink and rocks. Blue flowers. Piggy, partly recovered, pointed to the conch in Ralph's hands, and Jack and Simon felt silent. Ralph ran on. While we're waiting, we have a good time on this island. He gesticulated widely. It's like in a book. At once there was a clamor. Treasure Island, swallows and Amazons, Coral Island. Ralph waved the conch. This is our island. It's a good island until the grown-ups come to fetch us. We'll have fun. Jack held out his hand for the conch. There's pigs, he said. There's food and bathing water and that little stream along there. And everything. Didn't anyone find anything else? He handed the conch back to Ralph and sat down. Apparently no one has found anything. The older boys will first notice the child where he resisted. There was a group of little boys urging him forward, and he did not want to go. He was a shrimp of a boy, about 6 years old, and one side of his face was bloated out by a mulberry-colored birthmark. He stood now, wrapped out of the perpendicular by the fierce light of publicity. Wait, that was a really hard word, sorry about that. And he bored into the coarse grass with one toe. He was muttering and about to cry. The other little boys, whispering but serious, pushed him towards Ralph. All right, said Ralph, come on then. The small boy looked around in panic. Speak up. The small boy held out his hand for the conch, and the assembly shouted with laughter. At once he snatched back his hand and started to cry. Let him have the conch, shouted Piggy. Let him have it. At last Ralph induced him to hold the shell, but by then the blow of laughter had taken away the child's voice. Piggy knelt by him, one hand on the great shell, listening and interpreting to the assembly. He wants to know what you're going to do about the snake thing. Ralph laughed, and the other boys laughed with him. The small boy twisted further into himself. Tell us about the snake thing. Now he says it was a beastie. Beastie? A snake thing. Ever so big. He saw it. Where? In the woods. Either the wandering breezes or perhaps the decline of the sun allowed a little coolness to lie under the trees. The boys felt it and stirred restlessly. Restlessly, yeah, sorry about that. You couldn't have a beastie. A snake thing on an island this size? Ralph explained kindly. You only get them in the big countries like Africa or India. Murmur and the grave nodded of heads. He says the beastie came in the dark. Then he couldn't see it. Laughter and cheers. Did you hear that? Says he saw the thing in the dark. He still says he saw the beastie. It came and went away again and came back and wanted to eat him. He was dreaming, laughing. Ralph looked for confirmation around the ring of faces. The older boys agreed, but here and there among the little ones was a dubiety that requires more than rational assurance. He must have had a nightmare, stumbling about among all those creepers. More grave nodding. They knew about nightmares. He says he saw the beastie. The snake thing. Will it come back tonight? But there isn't a beastie. He says in the morning it turned him into them things like ropes in the trees and hung in the branches. He said, will it come back tonight? But there isn't a beastie. There was no laughter at all now. More grave watching. Ralph punched both hands through his hair. Pushed both hands through his hair, sorry about that. And looked at the little boy in mixed amusement and exasperation. Jack seized the conch. Ralph's right, of course. There isn't a snake thing, but if there was a snake, we'll hunt it and kill it. We're going to hunt pigs and get meat for everybody. We'll look for the snake too. But there isn't a snake. Well, we'll make sure when we go hunting. Ralph was annoyed and for the moment defeated. He felt himself facing something ungraspable. The eyes that looked so intently at him were without humor. But there isn't a beast. Something he had not known was there rose in him and compelled him to make the point loudly and again. But I'll tell you, there isn't a beast. The assembly was silent. Ralph lifted the conch again, and his good humor came back as he thought of what he had to say next. Now we come to the most important thing. I was thinking while we were climbing the mountain. He flashed a conspiratorial grin on the other two. And on the beach just now, this is what I thought. We want to have fun, and we want to be rescued. The passionate noise of agreement from the assembly hit him like a wave, and he lost his thread. He thought again. We want to be rescued, and of course we shall be rescued. The voices babbled. A simple statement, unbacked by any proof but the weight of Ralph's new authority, brought light and happiness. He had to wave the conch before he could make them hear him. My father's in the Navy. He said there aren't any unknown islands left. He says the Queen has a big room full of maps and all the islands in the world are drawn there. So the Queen's got a picture of this island. Again came the sound of the cheerfulness and better heart. And sooner or later a ship will put in here. Might even be Daddy's ship. So you see, sooner or later we shall be rescued. He paused with the point made. The assembly was lifted towards safety by his words. They liked and now respected him. Spontaneously they began to clap, and presently the platform was loud with applause. Ralph flushed, looking sideways at Piggy's open admiration, and then the other way at Jack, who was smirking and showing that he too knew how to clap. Ralph raised the conch. Shut up, wait, listen, he went on in the silence born on his triumph. There's another thing. We can help him find us. If a ship comes near the island, they may not notice us. So we must make smoke on top of the mountain. We must make a fire. A fire? Make a fire! At once, half the boys were on their feet. Jack clamored among them, the conch forgotten. Come on, follow me! The space under the palm trees was full of noise and movement. Ralph was on his feet too, shouting for quiet, but no one heard him. All at once, the crowd swayed towards the island and were gone, following Jack. Even the tiny children went and did their best among the leaves and broken branches. Ralph was left, holding the conch with no one but Piggy. Piggy's breathing was quite restored. Little kids, he said scornfully, acting like a crowd of kids. Ralph looked at him doubtfully and laid the conch on the tree trunk. I bet it's going tea time, said Piggy. What do you think they're going to do on that mountain? He cocked himself respectfully, then stopped and looked up. Ralph? Hey, where are you going? Ralph was already clambering over the first smashed swaths of the scar. A long way ahead of him was crashing and laughter. Piggy watched him in disgust. Like a crowd of kids, he sighed, bent, and laced up his shoe. of the errant assembly faded up the mountain. Then, with a martyred expression of a parent who has to keep up with the senseless ebullience of the children. I have no idea what that word means. He picked up the conch turned towards the forest and began to pick his way over the tumbled scar. Below the other side of the mountain top was a platform of forest. Once more Ralph found himself making the cupping gesture. Down there, we could get as much wood as we want. Jack nodded and pulled at his underlip. Started perhaps 100 feet below them, on the steeper side of the mountain. The patch might have been designed expressly for fuel. Trees forced by a damp heat found too little soil for full growth, fell early and decayed. Creepers cradled them, and now saplings surged a way up. Jack turned to the choir, who stood ready. Their black caps of maintenance were slit over one ear like barrettes. We'll build a pile, come on. They found the likely pad down and began tugging at the dead wood. And small boys who had reached the top came sliding to till everyone but Piggy was busy. Most of the wood was so rotten that when they pulled it, it broke into a shower of fragments and wood lice and decay. But some trunks came out in one piece. The twins, Sam and Eric, were the first to get a likely log, but they could do nothing till Ralph, Jack, Simon, Roger, and Maurice found room for a handhold. Then they inched the grotesque dead thing up to the rock and toppled it over the top. Each party of boys added a quota, less or more, and the pile grew. At the return, Ralph found himself alone, on a limb with Jack, and they grinned at each other, sharing the burden once more amid the breeze, shouting. The slanting sunlight on the high mountain. Thank you.